openings? Who's obsessed? Who gets all the clothing to go to the Oscars? You know, it's all kind of self-propelled. Yeah, other people watch the Oscars, but in LA, it's what you do. And same with us. What region used more electronics than any other region until 10 years ago? It was us. Who invented the ways of modern using the internet? It's the Bay Area. Who was the most wired area in the world? The Bay Area. So we used our own stuff. I don't know if we're not the only ones to watch Pixar movies, but we use a lot of our own stuff. Okay. And in my urban geography, I love to point out, manhole covers made in Oakland. Phoenix Ironworks made in Oakland. Now they're made in India, so the world's changing. But in the past, all that stuff was made locally. The wood was cut locally. The houses were built locally. The food was processed locally, and so on. Okay. Cities and society. Cities have also been hearts of capitalism and modernity. If you read books for you cultural types, if you're into that cultural history, you read about modernity. It's all about like Parisian department stores. So it's all about Paris, or it's about New York. Modernity is overwhelming. It's not, in fact, just urban, but it's a lot of the hearts of it are urban. It is the area where commercial life is the most advanced, where money buys and sells everything, where traditional ways of life and ways of interacting break down. Max Weber wrote about this. Modernity was a switch from Gemeinschaft. I think I got it backwards. Well, whatever it was. I probably got it wrong. I was always a weak on Max Weber. Or the Chicago School of Sociology about anonymity in the city. Cities are really a different kind of place where social ties break down and new ties are developed that have to do with commercial nexus, much more. Centers of consumption, centers of accumulation, and finance, and so on. So cities have played this absolutely crucial role in the rise of capitalism. And that's going on. That's why I showed Shanghai here. That's going on in China today, and you can't get away from it. Cities have also been centers of creativity. The city life allows for more eccentricity, more mixing of weirdly different people. Ideas tend to spark and spin off of that. Cultural experimentation, life experimentation, artistic experimentation, and so on. There are also, of course, huge labor pools. The greatest, most various labor pools in electronics are still Silicon Valley. I like this. And there's a geographer, a quasi-geographer, Richard Florey, who's been an old mate of mine, who's made himself extremely well-known, extremely well-to-do, well off, by selling cities the idea that you can compete and grow through attracting what he calls the creative class. There's about 4 books on this. He's a private consultant. I don't know if I showed him earlier as a consultant to Boris Johnson, the mayor of the city of London. He gets hundreds of thousands of dollars for this stuff. Basically selling a very basic and reasonable idea up to a point, which is that innovative economies, modern or high-tech economies and so on, are based, need a big skilled labor force. That labor force needs to be creative. So it's often young, kind of urban-type people who are breaking with old ways of doing things. And he even does these correlations to show that you get more creative people where there are more queer people, where there are more operas and more jazz clubs and so on. To sort of show all that stuff goes together. And yeah, that's right. And cities have always done this. Why he thinks this is new? It isn't. Cities have always done this. And of course, along the way, he forgets about all the people who aren't the technological elite.
So how do they make creative people come to the cities?
Oh, well, then, of course, that's the problem. And then they do things like trying to convert Skid Rows into nice condos for young hipsters and make it easier to have restaurants. Mid-market is a perfect example. And mid-market, the reason mid-market sucks is because it fulfilled a function that died 50 years ago, which is entertainment for the masses. Movie theaters, billiard halls, food eateries, and so on. We now take our entertainment on in television or iPods or whatever it is. Secondly, all around there's nothing but poor people. Poor people don't have any money. The problem with mid-market is that poor people don't have any money, and there are poor people there. So if you're going to redo mid-market, you've got to chase the poor people out. And that's the process they're trying to unleash. Put Twitter down there. They got this deal with Twitter. Bring in the creative class who will have lots of money and can support little restaurants and cafes. All of which will be much nicer. Because where there's money, things tend to look nicer, and you can buy more things, and life is good, right? And where there isn't, life is crappier. So they're going to gentrify it. It'll be interesting if they can pull it off, though, because the Tenderloin is still there. South Market is still there, and not all the poor people are going to be chased out. So what do you do? So we'll see. It's an internal battle. They've been having in San Francisco for 50 years trying to chase the old working class out of there. Yeah. Creative class is just a new name for yuppies. That's all it is. Bring in the yuppies. Yeah. And the Bay Area, of course, is case number 1. It's based on a basically good sound idea, which is labor is the source of all innovation. Right? It isn't big corporations, it's people, creative people. That's true. The problem is he forgets a lot of the other kinds of labor. All the people have to wash the dishes for the yuppies, and so on. What do you do about that? In his latest book, apparently, you've told me, was it you that told me that he's written a recent book kind of trying to fill in some of those people that were forgotten there? Because Richard's not a terrible guy. But it gets picked up by the cities as, we got to get the creative people, so get these ne'er-do-wells out of here, and let's get some yuppies in, and then everything will take off. And of course, it doesn't pay any attention to all the things I said about clustering and districts. You don't just make this out of whole cloth. San Francisco's got already a Twitter cluster. It's got a big subcluster of Silicon Valley, which is focused around social network stuff, okay, and games. And visuals and artistic stuff and all that, south of Market. So they're trying to push that into the mid-market, because like they pushed Union Square shopping onto Market Street, got San Francisco Center, the Westfield Center, very nice, brought the Richies of Union Square down onto Market Street. Now they can bring the yuppies, the Twitties of south of Market into mid-markets and see, boom, click, you got it. So that's what they're doing. And you think there's a class struggle. Class struggle over space is essential to urban geography. Okay, the city characters, cities actually reflect their economic basis. And then we give them names. Hollywood. When we say Hollywood, we mean West LA. When we say Wall Street, we mean downtown and midtown Manhattan. When we say Madison Avenue, Mad Men, we mean the advertising cluster that used to be on Madison Avenue. It certainly was up into Connecticut. Where are the, I don't know, you can pick your industry. Industries characterize places. Some people still buy Iron City beer, right? Well, where does that come from? It comes from Pittsburgh. It is Pittsburgh, isn't it? Or it's from Bethlehem or one of those places. And so on and so on. Capital cities. Everybody works for the government. Why is Washington, D.C. so weird? Everybody works for the government or the Beltway. And so on. You go to places like Brasilia or Canberra that are just these government cities that were stuck out in the middle of nowhere for national reasons. They're so boring. Poor Sacramento's been trying to live that down for years. Okay, and cities and politics. Cities tend to be centers of liberality and experimentation. There's limits to that, let me tell you. But there's a lot of historic basis for that. But cities have also been centers of political power and domination. So there's always been a lot of rural resentment. There's one of those flashing ones again, of rural resentment against cities. And we hear that all the time. You know, the famous headline I think Harvey has in his book about when New York went bankrupt. Ford to New York, drop dead. You know, or how many movies do we have about the naives from the countryside, you know, Midnight Cowboy who go to New York, and it's another world. Or what's that one with, oh shoot, what's it, huh? Oh, yeah, Crocodile Dundee, that's another one. Sure. I was thinking, oh God, what's it? Oh, well, there's a million of them that you know. Take my word for it. But if you look at this is from, I don't know which election because it's blinking, but I think this is 2008. And when you look at it state by state, you see it as a regional map. But when you look at it like this, you see it as cities versus the rest of the country. That's Obama was an urban vote. You know, even in Texas, Houston voted for Obama. Now, Dallas did not. No, the red was Democrat. Yes, the coast, it's the cities. Yeah. Red is urban. Wait a second. But red is urban on this map, but that's the reverse of what we usually do with blue and red. Pardon me? Yeah, so, this is backwards. Why did they flip it? That's very confusing, because once we have our color code, you can imagine how confused I am, because in most of my life, red meant evil leftists, like reds. So, okay, cities, power, I gotta keep moving, Cities are very divided, we won't go into that. But think of the role of cities in something like the rebellion in Egypt. Where does it take place? Overwhelmingly in Cairo. In certain districts of Cairo, particularly famously Tahrir Square. Certain cities in Syria are rebellious. Benghazi in Libya, a city as a center of political action, political organization, political opposition. So it's very important to control cities. The question of class control. In 73, as you'll read with Harvey later on, the bankers took over New York from what had been a really strong working class in the post-war era. What else? China's still trying to control Hong Kong, and the people of Hong Kong keep voting for more autonomy and kind of fight back against China. Say, well, you promised us democracy. And the Chinese central government, Beijing, is not that interested in democracy. And so on. Okay, which brings me to my last topic to wrap up, which is shorter, but we have to know. Networks. So systems of cities, hierarchy of cities, vanguards, which I may repeat myself, I hope not. So systems of cities is an old idea that cities actually relate to each other. They relate to each other more than they do to the countryside. There was an old theory of cities and hinterlands. And there's something to that, and we'll talk about resource hinterlands and so on. But as Alan Fred showed many years ago, that already by 1850 or 1860, cities in the United States did more trade, had more information flow, capital flow, commodity flows between the cities than they did with their rural hinterland. And actually, if you take apart the rural hinterland, you'll see that it's cities relating to towns, the smaller cities, which are relating to towns, not directly to the countryside, and so on. So we get with this idea of systems of cities, about interconnections, intercity networks, that are also about growth. Cities don't just grow autarkically by themselves, but they also grow as a national city system through interactions with each other. LA and San Francisco, they've been competing for years. We all make jokes about each other. But if you look at the economic relations, they're really thick. Capital investment, technology. After all, Disney owns Pixar, which makes all those great animated movies for Hollywood, which then Disney distributes. What's more LA than Disney? How did Disney make his first? I told you his first tube was made by Hewlett and Packard. So there's this long-term relationship between technology in the Bay Area and Hollywood films. And there's lots of other relationships: food system, capital, banking system, and so on. So we're actually very connected, even though we like to think we're not. This now applies to global cities. That these cities today, with globalization, they relate to each other, often more than they relate to their own countries, or certainly on the same plane. Which again leads to the side of globalization breaking down national boundaries, because these networks are so intense that the Bay Area relates to Seoul and Osaka and to Hong Kong and Taipei and so on, more than it relates to St. Louis or Texas, I think. And that these networks are really the skeleton or the sinews or whatever animal metaphor you want to use for the world economy. Is that interesting? Okay. Hierarchies. Cities are hierarchical. So just like we talk about this core and the periphery of nations over time, the colonial powers in the ex-colony, the global north, global south, all those metaphors and simple ideas we have about relationships of hierarchy amongst nations, those apply almost more so to cities and even to regions. They're hierarchical. And city systems are quite hierarchical. This has been known for a long time. You can take the city system of a country or the city system of a world, and you'll see that there's a handful. There's always like one super city, or maybe at the world level, 2 or 3 supersized cities. Then there's some mega cities. Then there's just really big cities, and then there's sort of big cities, and on down. And these hierarchies are quite nested, often regionally nested, even though they have a lot of cross-cutting intersections. So New York dominates the U.S. economy in many ways, but it also connects to the world. So you get this kind of exponential rank ordering with one really big, and then a couple. Where do you put? And the second tier, and people argue about this, do you do it by population or something else? This is actually a chart of U.S. cities ranked by their media markets. And so the Bay Area actually comes out smaller than it does in population. And Dallas-Fort Worth beats us because this is a Nielsen ranking based on number of television sets. So we're looking at our iPods or iPads. Other people are looking at their television. We're buying Netflix, another Bay Area company, while Dallas is looking at, Fox. Definitely looking at Fox. And these networks go all the way down to small towns. It's the old central place theory, right? But it isn't that neat and tidy. But it is there. The hierarchy of places, of central places, does show up in city hierarchies. They vary across countries. France is a highly centralized country. It has the capital, the financial center, the biggest industrial center, the biggest commercial center, the center of all railroads is Paris. And Paris has 12 to 15 million people in the metro area. The next biggest city is Lyon, which has maybe 600,000. It's unbelievable. That's the worst. But how about London and England? London connects to the world. London is at least 20-some million people. The next biggest city is Birmingham, I think, or Manchester?
Manchester, Leeds are both reach over 1 million people.
Whoa, 1 million, compared to 20 million. Now, if you look at the U.S., huh? Yes, it does. Greater London is way over 20 million. The city of London is like 8 or something. Yeah, it's the metro area we're talking about. And Germany and the U.S., which are much more regionalized, with these federalist states and different histories, with much more autonomous regions, have much more dispersed city systems. So we have these cities like Chicago or St. Louis that grew up with their region. Then they integrate into the national and maybe even the world economy, but we have many more big cities in the U.S. New York does not dominate the U.S. the way Paris dominates France or London dominates Britain. And so you can have arguments in the U.S. about, even in California we can't decide what's, L.A. really dominate California? Yeah. No, it has to do with politics. It has nothing to do with size. It has everything to do with political history. So we got global hierarchies. Same thing happens. Oh, didn't I already have that? I did. Well, okay, we have national hierarchies and we have global hierarchies. Same thing. There's a lot of literature, people yap about global cities. But all big cities in the world are globalized. So the idea that there's some global cities and then nothingville is wrong. They're all integrated. They all compete like hell as well. They're integrated, but they compete. So that's a universal thing. Shanghai, Guangzhou, they hate each other. And everybody hates Beijing. And just like we all hate Washington, D.C., right? And finally, the vanguard, I'll wrap it up here. Cities, again, have been the global vanguard of capitalism. When you've got the rise of capitalism going all the way back to the Mediterranean, and Venice, Genoa, and so on, cities are at the leadership. It was true across the U.S., it's true in China, and so on and so forth. They're the industrial vanguards. That's why, Britain, Manchester, workshop of the world. Shenzhen, workshop of the world. The same thing goes on and on and on. Okay, and that is it. See you on Tuesday.